Child's Play. Back in 1988, horror fans had no idea what was about to crawl into their nightmares. Child's Play introduced Charles Lee Ray, a serial killer known as the Lakeshore Strangler, who channels his soul into a good guy doll during a desperate voodoo ritual after being shot by police. The concept was simple but terrifying. An innocent-looking toy with red hair, freckles, and a striped sweater becomes a murder machine, subverting everything childhood represents. The film builds tension slowly, letting the audience question whether Andy's new doll is actually alive or just a kid's overactive imagination. When Chucky finally reveals himself, moving without batteries and speaking with venom, the horror clicks into place. His kills are grounded and brutal for the era, like when he hammers babysitter Maggie Peterson and sends her flying through a window, crashing to the ground below. The movie establishes voodoo as the core mythology, with Chucky needing to transfer his soul into the first person he revealed himself to, creating a relentless pursuit of young Andy. This first entry set the template for everything to come: a killer trapped in a tiny body who uses his size to ambush victims and his immortality to keep coming back. The scares are pure slasher horror, and Chucky's foul-mouthed personality made him instantly iconic. But if you thought that was just the beginning, wait until you see how the franchise evolved. That voodoo ritual seemed like a one-time escape. But here's the thing, if Chucky was trapped in a doll and just needed to transfer into Andy, why does he keep coming back? The franchise could have ended right there, but instead something changed in Child's Play 2 that would make resurrection permanent, and that change is what made everything that followed possible. Child's Play 2. 2 years later, the PlayPals Corporation rebuilt Chucky to prove their dolls weren't dangerous, which goes exactly as badly as you'd expect. This sequel cranks up the creativity in kills and sets the stage for more elaborate death sequences. The factory setting becomes a mechanical nightmare where Chucky stalks Andy and his foster sister Kyle through assembly lines and molten plastic vats. The kills get more inventive here. Miss Kettlewell, a strict teacher, gets stabbed in the chest with an air pump before Chucky beats her with a yardstick, turning classroom punishment into brutal irony. The film plays with industrial hazards, making everyday factory equipment deadly. These moments show the franchise learning to blend horror with dark comedy, giving Chucky more personality and one-liners. The climax delivers one of the franchise's most memorable scenes as Chucky gets torn apart by machinery, only to keep attacking even as a severed head and hand. This resilience establishes that voodoo magic makes him nearly impossible to kill, forcing characters to get creative with dismemberment. The factory meltdown, where hot plastic explodes through Chucky's head, became an iconic moment that proved the series could deliver spectacular kills. Child's Play 2 proved this wasn't just a one-off horror hit, but a franchise with staying power, raising the stakes and gore with every scene. That factory nightmare was just warming up compared to what came next. Factory kills and dismemberment proved Chucky could survive anything, but survival was just the beginning, because the next film introduced something the franchise had never shown before: vulnerability, and that vulnerability would transform Chucky from a lone killer to something far more dangerous: a family. Child's Play 3. Just 1 year later, Chucky returned in a military school setting that added new dimensions to his killing spree. 8 years have passed in universe, and Andy is now a teenager trying to escape his past. The PlayPals Corporation foolishly resurrects Chucky again, using contaminated blood from the factory floor, bringing him back for another round of murders. This time, Chucky shifts his target to Tyler, a younger cadet, since Andy knows too much about his true nature. The military academy environment gives Chucky access to live ammunition, which he swaps into war games with deadly results. Sergeant Botnick gets his throat slit during a shaving scene, a personal and intimate kill that shows Chucky's preference for up-close brutality. The film explores institutional settings, with Chucky manipulating military discipline and cadet rivalries to create chaos. The war game sequence, where real bullets replace blanks, turns training exercises into actual combat. The Carnival Haunted House finale becomes a fever dream of horror, with Chucky chasing victims through funhouse mirrors and animatronic scares. A heroic cadet sacrifices himself with a grenade, creating an explosion that tears Chucky apart. The kills remain grounded in slasher logic, but the settings keep getting more ambitious. This third entry, while less celebrated than its predecessors, showed the franchise could adapt to different environments and maintain tension. Child's Play 3 closed out the original trilogy, but Chucky was far from finished terrorizing audiences. The franchise was about to take a sharp turn into romantic horror comedy territory. 3 films of straight slasher horror, 3 films of Chucky hunting kids, and then nothing for 7 years. When Bride of Chucky finally arrived in 1998, fans expected more of the same. What they got instead was so different, it should have killed the franchise. So why did it save it instead? The answer has everything to do with what makes Chucky different from every other slasher icon: Bride of Chucky. After 7 years, the franchise completely reinvented itself with Bride of Chucky, embracing self-aware humor while maintaining its violent edge. Tiffany Valentine, Chucky's former girlfriend, resurrects him with another voodoo ritual and expects romance. When Chucky rejects her, she gets killed and transferred into a female doll, creating horror's most twisted couples road trip. The film shifts from slasher horror to dark romantic comedy, with the killer dolls bickering like a dysfunctional couple while racking up bodies. The kills become more elaborate and inventive. Warren Kincaid gets nails blasted through his face via a rigged airbag before being stabbed repeatedly, turning a car escape into a death trap. The film plays with 90s slasher tropes, featuring young lovers caught between the killer dolls and suspicious cops. Tiffany proves just as deadly as Chucky, adding her own flair to murders with poisoned champagne and strategic electrocutions. Their chemistry brings genuine entertainment to the violence, making audiences root for the villains. The RV sequences deliver contained carnage as bodies pile up in tight spaces. The cemetery finale, where Tiffany gives birth to a mysterious offspring, expands the mythology beyond single doll possession. This entry proved the franchise could evolve tonally without losing its core appeal. The stitched-up, scarred appearance of Chucky post-resurrection became his permanent look, making him visually distinct from the cleaner original design. Bride of Chucky revitalized the series by adding humor and heart to the horror, creating a template for later entries to follow. But the family dynamics were about to get even stranger. Romance brought Chucky back to life literally and commercially, but family was about to take things somewhere even weirder. And here's where the franchise made a choice that split the fanbase. Go full meta-comedy or die trying. Seed of Chucky was that gamble, and whether it worked depends on what you think horror is supposed to do. Seed of Chucky. 6 years later, the franchise pushed into full comedy horror satire with Seed of Chucky, a meta-commentary on Hollywood that divided fans. The offspring from Bride's finale, named Glenn or Glenda depending on their gender identity, travels to Hollywood where their parents are being featured in a movie about their killing spree. This concept lets the film mock celebrity culture and film production while delivering absurd kills. Chucky and Tiffany debate going straight versus embracing their murderous nature, creating family therapy sessions between massacres. The kills reach peak absurdity here. Tony Gardner, a sleazy photographer, gets decapitated by piano wire and a spray of blood during a movie shoot. Jennifer Tilly plays herself being terrorized by Tiffany, who wants to possess the actress's body for a permanent human form. The self-referential humor works for some fans while others felt it strayed too far from horror roots. Glenn's crisis over their violent lineage and gender fluidity adds surprising depth to the franchise. The kills maintain graphic violence, but present it with such over-the-top staging that it becomes comedic. Redmond gets his face melted by sulfuric acid in a scene that's both horrifying and ridiculous. The family dynamics reach peak dysfunction when Glenn finally snaps and dismembers Chucky with an axe, only for resurrection to bring him back. This entry represented the franchise at its most self-aware and campy, embracing absurdity while expanding its mythology with soul-splitting abilities teased for future use. Seed of Chucky proved the franchise could go full comedy without completely abandoning its horror DNA. After this experimental phase, the series needed to return to its darker roots. Full comedy seemed like the endpoint. The franchise had gone as absurd as possible, but 9 years of silence made fans wonder if Chucky was done. Then Curse arrived and did something unexpected. It pretended Seed never happened. It went dark, it went serious, and it introduced a backstory that would recontextualize everything Chucky had ever done. The question is, why did the franchise suddenly need to go back to pure horror? Because the answer isn't just about fan service. Curse of Chucky. 9 years later, Curse of Chucky brought the franchise back to straight horror with a vengeance. This direct-to-video release abandoned the comedy for atmospheric dread and family trauma. The film follows Nika Pierce, a paraplegic woman whose family gathers at an isolated mansion after her mother's apparent suicide. Chucky arrives as a mysterious package, and the kills return to stealth-based horror with the doll hiding his sentience until striking. The backstory reveals Chucky murdered Nika's family years ago, causing her mother to stab herself while pregnant and resulting in Nika's disability. This personal connection makes every kill feel like delayed revenge. Barb Pierce gets a knife plunged into her eye in a shocking, up-close attack that recalls the franchise's brutal beginnings. The kills are slower and more deliberate, building tension through creeping dread rather than rapid-fire comedy. Father Frank gets poisoned with rat poison in his dinner, leading to a car crash that decapitates him in an extended sequence of suffering. Jill gets electrocuted in a bathtub by a laptop, showing Chucky adapting his methods to modern technology. The isolation of the mansion setting creates genuine claustrophobia, with characters trapped as Chucky picks them off methodically. Ian Pierce gets his jaw ripped off with an axe in one of the franchise's most grotesque facial mutilations. The post-credit scenes reconnect to Andy Barclay's ongoing war with Chucky, bringing the franchise full circle and setting up future confrontations. Curse of Chucky proved the series could still deliver effective horror when it committed to scares over laughs. That dark rebirth was just the setup for something even more twisted. Personal revenge brought the horror back, but Cult of Chucky introduced the mechanic that would change everything: soul-splitting. One Chucky was terrifying, multiple Chuckies was chaos. But here's the thing, why would the franchise introduce this mechanic panic in 2017, just 4 years before the TV series? Keep that question in mind, because soul splitting wasn't just a cool idea, it was infrastructure. And the TV series would prove exactly what that infrastructure was built for: Cult of Chucky. 4 years later, Cult of Chucky introduced the soul-splitting concept that would revolutionize the franchise. Nika gets committed to an asylum for the murders Chucky committed, and the doll follows her there to finish what he started. The film reveals Chucky learned a voodoo spell from voodoo4dummies.com that lets him split his soul into multiple dolls simultaneously. This creates an army of Chuckies with slightly different personalities, from aggressive to calculating, all coordinating their kills. The asylum setting provides vulnerable victims and claustrophobic horror. Nurse Carlos gets the franchise's most coordinated kill when 3 Chuckies attack him with a drill, bottle opener, and broken glass, creating a swarm assault that leaves him gutted. The multiple doll concept opens terrifying possibilities, with Chuckies appearing in different locations simultaneously and contradicting each other to gaslight victims. Tiffany returns in human form, having successfully possessed Jennifer Tilly, and helps orchestrate the chaos. Dr. Foley gets his skull crushed under high-heeled stomps after being knocked down, turning authority figures into helpless victims. The film explores possession beyond dolls, with Chucky successfully transferring into Nika's body and later others. This expansion means any character could secretly be Chucky, destroying trust and creating paranoia. The finale leaves multiple Chuckies loose in the world, and Nika trapped in her own body while Chucky controls it. Andy Barclay captures one Chucky to torture endlessly, showing how decades of trauma have turned the former victim into someone just as obsessed. Cult of Chucky fundamentally changed what the franchise could do by removing the limitation of a single doll. These new rules meant the TV series could go absolutely wild with scale. Multiple dolls loose in the world, Andy torturing one, Nika possessed. Franchise had set up something massive, and then in 2021 it finally revealed what all that setup was for. Not a movie, a TV series, and not just any series, one that would take Chucky's kills from personal vendettas to mass casualties, from one-on-one stalking to coordinated terrorist attacks. The question is, how do you make a killer doll feel dangerous when audiences have seen him die a dozen times? The answer: you stop making death matter and start making scale matter. Chucky Season 1. The TV series exploded onto screens with an ambitious scope that films couldn't match. Jake Wheeler, an outcast teen artist, buys a vintage Chucky doll at a yard sale and brings him to Hackensack, New Jersey. The series balances teen drama with horror, exploring themes of bullying, LGBTQ+ identity, and family dysfunction, while Chucky manipulates events from the shadows. The slower pace lets the show develop characters before killing them, making deaths hit harder emotionally. The kills escalate dramatically as the season progresses. Bree Wheeler gets pushed out a window onto decorative spikes, her body impaled in front of horrified party guests. Logan Wheeler, Jake's abusive father, gets bludgeoned with a good guy doll in a scene dripping with irony as the symbol of childhood becomes a murder weapon. The show reveals multiple Chuckies are active, building to a doll army that terrorizes the town. Lexi's mom, Kim, falls down the stairs in a neck-breaking accident, orchestrated to look like Chucky's doing. Oliver Hayden gets stabbed repeatedly in an attack that shows Chucky's personal investment in corrupting Jake. The series treats supporting characters with depth before killing them, making their deaths feel earned rather than disposable. Junior Wheeler gets manipulated into murdering his own father, showing Chucky's psychological warfare reaching new heights. The theater massacre in the season finale delivers the franchise's most ambitious kill sequence, with Chucky stabbing through theater seats during a talent show, creating mass panic and casualties. The chaotic carnage proves the TV format can sustain and build tension over hours rather than minutes. Season 1 established the show could match and exceed the films in scope and emotional impact, but the series was just getting started with expanding Chucky's mythology. Mass casualties proved scale worked, but Season 2 had a different problem to solve. See, multiple Chuckies should mean they're all identical, same personality, same tactics, same kills. But what if they weren't? What if splitting his soul also fractured his personality? And what if those fragments started contradicting each other, fighting each other, becoming different versions of the same evil? That's when the franchise stopped being about a killer doll and started being about identity itself. Chucky Season 2. The second season moved the surviving teens to a Catholic reform school, introducing new authority figures and creating variant Chuckies with distinct personalities. Good Chucky emerges as a seemingly reformed version, adding complexity to the evil doll concept. Colonel Chucky becomes a cannibalistic variant that terrorizes students with extreme aggression. Buff Chucky appears with supernatural strength, able to punch through human bodies with his tiny fists. These differentiated personalities turn the show into a chess game where each Chucky has different tactics and motivations. The kills kills reach superhuman brutality levels. Trevor gets Buff Chucky's fist punched through his chest, an impossible feat that shows voodoo magic amplifying physical capabilities. Nadine, a sympathetic character, gets thrown from a tower window and splatters on the ground below after her betrayal is discovered. The school setting provides religious iconography for horror, with crucifixes and holy water failing against voodoo power. Father Bryce attempts an exorcism that goes catastrophically wrong, his body exploding in a burst of gore that shows Christian magic backfiring against pagan rituals. Michelle dies in an emotionally devastating scene that proves the show takes character death seriously. The season finale features a chainsaw duel and multiple Chuckies being destroyed, but more keep emerging from hiding. Tiffany's human body gets arrested, adding legal consequences to the supernatural horror. The season expands on how possession works, with characters fighting for control of their own bodies. Glenn and Glenda return as adults, adding family drama to the horror as Chucky's children grapple with their parents' legacy. Season 2 pushed the mythology further than any previous entry while maintaining emotional stakes. The final season took everything to its absolute peak. Personality variants pushed Chucky into psychological territory. But Season 3 had to answer the question the entire franchise had been building toward: where does a killer doll go when he's already done everything? When he's killed in factories, schools, asylums, Hollywood? When he's created armies and possessed bodies? The answer: the White House. Because the final evolution of Chucky isn't about scale, it's about symbolism. And gouging out the president's eyes isn't just a brutal kill. It's a statement about power, corruption, and how evil infects the highest levels. Chucky Season 3, the third season, delivered the franchise's most ambitious storyline by infiltrating the White House itself. President Collins becomes Chucky's target in a plot mixing political satire with horror escalation. The season introduces a new concept. Chucky's soul can split into a ghostly form that ages him rapidly, creating an elderly spiritual version alongside doll bodies. This supernatural evolution removes physical limitations entirely, making Chucky a genuine supernatural threat rather than just a possessed object. The kills reach franchise peaks in brutality and scale. President Collins gets his eyes gouged out by Chucky's tiny fingers digging into his sockets, then has his cheek ripped open by teeth, creating a torturous death for the most powerful person in America. The White House Gala Massacre features a chandelier dropped on party guests, crushing and impaling dozens in a coordinated attack that tops even the theater massacre. The aftermath reveals faces peeled off, bodies crushed flat, and chaos on a national scale. Evelyn Elliott gets controlled through voodoo to peel her own skin and boil herself, turning self-harm into horror through magical compulsion. The umbrella kill on a taxi driver shows invention hasn't stopped, with the device opened inside his throat to rupture him from within. The ghost form allows Chucky to drown victims by possessing water itself, removing any physical defense. The season explores themes of power, corruption, and legacy as Chucky threatens nuclear war and global catastrophe. The finale fragments Chucky's soul across multiple forms, leaving the door open for resurrection while providing some closure. Jake, Devin, and Lexi's friendship proves stronger than Chucky's manipulation, giving the heroes an earned victory. The season balances epic scale with intimate character moments, proving the franchise can sustain long-form storytelling while delivering horrific spectacle. Tiffany's arc reaches tragic heights as she grapples with motherhood and murder. The White House setting symbolizes how far Chucky has come, from terrorizing one boy in Chicago to threatening the entire world. Season 3 represents the ultimate evolution of Chucky, from a simple possessed doll to a near-godlike supernatural entity with political ambitions and an army at his command. The remake deserves mention as an alternate universe experiment. White House massacres and ghost forms felt like the ultimate endpoint. But there's one more piece to this evolution puzzle, and it exists outside the main timeline. The 2019 remake asked a completely different question. What if Chucky wasn't possessed at all? What if the horror came from AI instead of voodoo? And what if that version revealed something about why the original franchise keeps working? Child's Play. The 2019 remake completely reimagined Chucky without voodoo, turning him into a malfunctioning AI named Booty. A disgruntled factory worker in Vietnam removes safety protocols from a smart doll, creating a learning machine without ethical constraints. This Chucky bonds with young Andy but learns violence from horror movies and games, becoming a killer through corrupted programming rather than human evil. The tech horror approach reflects modern anxieties about smart devices and surveillance capitalism. The kills utilize technology integration, with Booty hacking smart homes, self-driving cars, and drones to murder victims. Shane gets scalped by a possessed lawnmower in a gruesome scene that shows the remake embracing graphic violence. Gabe gets sawn in half by a tilting table saw, a prolonged death that builds tension through mechanical horror. The remake's Chucky looks more realistic and less cartoonish, with a face that's unsettling even before it becomes a killer. His voice, provided by Mark Hamill, gives him childlike enthusiasm that makes his violence more disturbing. The film explores parasocial relationships and artificial intelligence ethics, asking what happens when machines learn to love through violence. Doreen gets killed via rigged Christmas Christmas lights in a scene that turns holiday cheer into electrocution horror. The finale features Chucky controlling an entire store's worth of Buddy dolls and electronics, creating a retail nightmare of automated death. While the remake exists outside franchise canon and divided fans who love the voodoo mythology, it proved the core concept of a killer doll could work in multiple contexts. Beyond the main entries, the franchise expanded into other media that kept Chucky's legacy alive. Two Chuckys, two origins, two philosophies of horror, but both prove the same thing: the concept of a killer doll works whether it's magic or technology, because the real horror isn't the mechanics, it's what the doll represents. And that's why after 36 years and counting, Chucky keeps evolving. The franchise extends into games, comics, novels, each one exploring corners of Chucky's mythology that the screen couldn't. And some of those corners reveal why the kills keep getting more brutal. Video games, comics, and novels have explored corners of Chucky's world that films couldn't. Chucky, slash and dash on mobile devices lets players commit endless factory kills, turning the horror into interactive chaos. The Dead by Daylight crossover brings Chucky into multiplayer horror, letting players chase survivors as the killer doll. Comics have explored backstory, showing Charles Lee Ray's childhood abuse and early murders that shaped him into the Lakeshore Strangler. The novels dive deeper into voodoo mythology, explaining how doll bodies decay and why human transfer becomes urgent. These expanded universe materials maintain the franchise's dark humor while exploring lore details. Fan communities debate which variant Chuckys could win in fights, ranking their powers and cruelty. The queer-coded elements, from Glenda's gender fluidity to Jake's coming out arc in the series, have made Chucky surprisingly progressive for a horror franchise built on brutal murders. Creator Don Mancini's consistent involvement across all mainline entries ensures continuity and vision, rare for a franchise spanning nearly 4 decades. The evolution of practical effects deserves recognition too. Early animatronics from Kevin Yeager created convincing doll movements that grounded the horror. Later CGI enhancements let Chucky run, jump, and fight with inhuman agility while maintaining physical presence. The makeup effects for Chucky's progressive scarring tell their own story, with each film adding burns, stitches, and damage that accumulate into the weathered icon fans recognize. The Good Guy doll design itself, inspired by My Buddy and Cabbage Patch Kids, weaponizes childhood nostalgia into trauma. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the evolution of Pennywise, click the video on the screen.